Welcome to the boat, and we are on our way to Heron Island, a beautiful little island in the southern Barrier Reef, the Great Barrier Reef here in Australia. And I live about 6 hours drive south of where Heron Island is. So we drove up to Gladstone and we took the boat over to Heron Island. It was a beautiful day when we arrived, but later on the clouds rolled in and it was grey, but still beautiful. We went in the middle of winter, which in Queensland doesn't get super cold, especially further north where Heron is, but it was cool enough on this day to throw on a jumper and a beanie and then sit and enjoy the view. Heron Island is a small island. It's approximately 40 acres or 16 hectares, and it's about 800 meters long by 300 meters wide, which is 2,600 feet long by 980 feet wide. So it's small and easy to walk around the whole island. It's an evergreen coral cay, and it's surrounded by 24 hectares of coral reef. One of the beautiful things about Heron is this reef because it gives you so much opportunity to snorkel and dive. And I went with my husband Nick and a couple of our friends. Now, Heron Island is a World Heritage listed marine national park, and all flora and fauna on the island is protected. So the island really is a nature lover's paradise, and the point of going to Heron isn't to go to a fancy resort. The point is to enjoy the natural beauty that you can find there. The island didn't actually become inhabited until the early 20th century, when a turtle cannery was actually established there. The aim at that time was to profit from the seasonal influx of green turtles. But thankfully, the venture didn't stay afloat, and in 1932, Captain Christian Paulson realized the potential that the island had as a tourist destination. And in 1936, he bought the lease of the island. In 1943, the whole island was declared a national park. Now, to stay on the island, there are only two options. For most of us, the option is Heron Island Resort. It is the only resort on the island. And if you want to visit as a normal, everyday person, this is the only way to do it. However, if you for some reason can get a spot at the University of Queensland Heron Island Research Station, you might be able to stay there. It's a world-class research and teaching facility on the island. We actually did a tour of the island when we were there, a tour of the research station, I should say, and it was really cool to see the experiments underway. So they host conferences and school groups and university students studying, usually marine biology, of course. So it's a great place for scientists to visit if they want to study the Barrier Reef or the turtle population. And when you go to the island, you can take a wonderful tour that tells you all about the turtles and the whales and the work that they do at the research station. I highly recommend checking that out. We were actually really lucky during our tour. We were at the rotunda, which is near where you enter the island, and we saw a whale breaching just off the reef, so just beyond the reef. The whale was playing, coming out of the water and flipping over. It was quite the spectacle. Now, one of the most famous aspects of Heron Island are the birds. Summer is the time of the birds, so since we were there in winter, we didn't see a huge amount. I mean, there were plenty, but nothing compared to what happens in summer, when up to 100,000 of them breed on the island. Apparently, when you're there in summer, their calls can be quite deafening. We didn't see heaps of different birds, but we did see some seagulls, aka angry birds. There was one particular seagull who thought the bar area was its own private territory. And there were plenty of egrets and railbirds. And you can see one just outside my room there. The little brown bird wandering around. They are super cute and they're all over the resort part of the island because they've learned that humans have food. So you are told to make sure that they don't get any of your food. Oh, there's another one. But they treat your room as if it's just their territory, and if you leave the door open, they will just wander in and out in the hope that they might find something yummy to eat. I really enjoyed having this room, which was right by the water. Now, because this is an eco resort, there is a break between the rooms and the beach where there's lots of trees to protect the integrity of the island. So we didn't have a direct view, but you could see the water and the sky peeking through the trees, and we had our own pathway directly down onto the beach, which was really lovely. So it was very easy to wander down and go for a swim. One thing you need to know about Heron Island is, because it is surrounded by the reef, you can only swim around high tide, because at low tide the water goes out and it's very, very shallow, and a lot of the reef actually pokes out of the water at low tide, so it's too shallow to swim at that time of day. But it's still a beautiful time and place to wander around, no matter how high the tide is. As I mentioned earlier, it is a very small island, so you can easily walk around the whole thing in much less than an hour, even at a relaxed pace. There's also a pathway up the middle of the island, which we'll visit soon. I really loved my time there, and one of the nice things about Heron Island is there's no internet and no phone reception. You can purchase some internet from the resort, but I chose to have a proper holiday and a proper break because I run my own online businesses and therefore I'm online a lot. And once a year I make sure to switch off for a few days and just enjoy life without worrying about Instagram or Facebook or email, and just exist in the moment. I spent a lot of time just wandering around, enjoying nature, swimming, reading, sitting and looking out at the horizon. You can't really see much out there. There are a few little islands nearby, but they're not exactly visible. So it kind of feels like you're just in the middle of nowhere. And because we were there in winter, it was not overly populated. Of course, international tourists can't come to Australia at the moment, so that was another reason why it was pretty quiet at the resort, which meant you could often wander around and not see many other people on the beach at all. Now, one of the main reasons we wanted to go to Heron Island was for the snorkeling. I'm an ocean swimmer and I swim in the ocean near my home a few times a week. So I love any opportunity to get in the ocean. And it's even more exciting when you have the opportunity to swim with the sea creatures and the coral and explore all of the wonders of the reef. There are some places closer to home that I go sometimes to snorkel, but there's also so many opportunities on the Great Barrier Reef, so many beautiful islands and coral reefs. So we were really lucky to be able to experience this. I've been to a few of the islands in the Great Barrier Reef before. This was definitely a highlight. I've snorkeled in lots of different places, Hawaii, Fiji, and they all have their beauty. But you can't really beat snorkeling basically on your doorstep. So here we see a bunch of parrotfish having a little nibble on the coral. I love parrotfish, they're just so bright and fun, and they're so easy to spot. And there's often plenty of them around when you're snorkeling on the reef. We also saw sharks, like this one, which looks like a white tip. And there's no need to be worried about these sharks. They're not interested in you. They're just doing their thing and hanging out in the ocean. So we saw lots of those as we were swimming around. And also, of course, lots of turtles. Definitely a highlight were all the green turtles that we saw. Now the turtles nest on Heron Island, and we weren't really there in turtle season when they lay their eggs, and we were pretty much at the end of the hatching season as well, so we didn't see any baby turtles. I have seen them before and they are super cute. But we definitely had the opportunity to swim with a lot of lovely turtles. Turtles always come back and nest on the island they were born on, which is pretty cool. But before they do that, they tend to go on a journey around the Pacific, and then they come back home. So here we have a bit of the inland pathway that leads from the resort up to Shark Bay, which is at the top of the island. There's lots of lovely flora on the island as well. The main ones are the trees, the Pisonia trees and the pandanus trees, all of which we have here at home as well. So it was very familiar to me. I did lots of walking on the island, even though there wasn't a great deal of space. You could still go out a few times a day and explore all the little nooks and crannies of the island. And of course, without the internet to distract you, you're more tempted to go outside. Now that is a pandanus tree, a very big one. And this is a butterfly that I spotted on one of my walks. There were lots of these around on the island. I'm familiar with this, but I can't remember what type of butterfly this is. But we do see them here at home as well. I love watching butterflies. They're so delicate. When they fly from flower to flower, spreading their wings. Now we're walking up to Shark Bay, and you might be able to see a small fence. This is part of the research station and the national park, and it's actually there to protect some eggs incubating, because they want to make sure they're not disturbed. I believe that was because they were a loggerhead turtle nest rather than a green turtle nest, because the loggerheads are a much smaller population. I can see an angry bird there, I think. Seagulls certainly aren't shy about telling you when you're not wanted. I loved how clear the water was. It's one of the wonderful things about getting out to the islands versus swimming off the mainland. When you swim off the mainland, often the sea can be a little bit murky because of the runoff from storms and the silt from rivers. But when you're out on the reef, on the islands, the water is often crystal clear. And here we can see, I believe, some of the egrets Now, fun fact, there aren't actually herons on Heron Island. Something I didn't actually know before I went there. What people see and think perhaps are herons are generally the egrets instead. I love the beautiful contrast between the teal water and the blue sky and the beautiful sandy beach. There are some different types of sand on the island. Some of it is quite fine, but a lot of it is relatively coarse sand because it's coming in from the reef and it's breaking down from these rock formations. So it isn't the pure white sand that you see on some of the other reef islands, but it's still beautiful. We had a few overcast days while we were there, but we also had some beautiful blue sky days like this one. And I definitely made the most of being able to get outside while the sun was shining. And even better, getting in the water and snorkeling while the sun was shining. Usually, for most of the year, I tend to avoid the sun here because it is so strong. But one of the beautiful things about winter is that you can actually go outside and enjoy it without feeling like you're going to burn to a crisp. Heron Island is world famous for its scuba diving. As I mentioned earlier, we're not divers, but we went with some friends who are, and there's over 20 dive sites, and half of those are only 15 minutes from the beach, which is pretty amazing. While they were there, they did their advanced dive course, but we were happy just to snorkel. I have scuba dived once on the northern Barrier Reef many years ago, and it was a really fun experience. But honestly, most of the time, you see the prettiest things when you're snorkeling because you're in the top layer of the water where the sunlight is. And that's what brings out all the colours of the animals and the coral. We were lucky to see a couple of really beautiful sunsets. And seeing the sun setting over the water like this is really special because we live on the east coast of Australia and therefore we only ever see sunrises over the water and never sunsets. So going out to the island and being able to see a sunset over the beautiful ocean is something really special. You can see a couple of people there bringing their kayak in. And there was a boat heading out for a sunset cruise, which is another thing you can do. But I was happy to sit at the bar with my drink and watch the sunset. They do have this little pool at the resort, but I didn't spend any time in there. I was too busy spending time in the ocean. This was our last day on Heron Island, and boy, did the weather come out for us. Another thing you can do there is a low tide walk on the reef, and a guide will take you and show you all of the amazing coral and wildlife. You can see the coral sticking out of the water at low tide, like I mentioned earlier. I did one of these walks and it was really fun. We saw blue starfish and Nemo, which was really cute. We saw lots and lots of sea cucumbers and tried not to step on any. Definitely don't step on sea cucumbers if you ever see one. But my favourite thing was the epaulet shark. They're super cute little sharks that are the size of a fluffy toy. So about a foot long, a little bit more, maybe 2 feet long sometimes. And I just wanted to pick one up and cuddle it because they have these little whiskers and they're just adorable. They really do look like a toy. We had a beautiful time on Heron Island, and if you ever have the chance to visit, I highly recommend that you come and check it out. It's a wonderful example of the beauty of my home state of Queensland here in Australia. And I feel very, very lucky to live in such a beautiful part of the world. Farewell for now, Heron Island. I am absolutely sure that I will be back again one day. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Good night.